This episode of Phone Booth Fighting is brought to you by Earth's Brew, the plant-based taste of nirvana, relaxation fusing the best of all worlds, health, taste, efficiency, and experience. And as Frank and I have been telling you for months now, he and I have both found a variety of ways to incorporate Earth's Brew into our own lives. Very effective for after jiu-jitsu training. And speaking of jiu-jitsu training, Robert Drysdale is my guest host this week, so he's going to be jumping in here. Frank talks about mixing up the Earth's Brew in a little bit of water after jiu-jitsu training, and I do the same thing. 100% plant-based, no preservatives, no artificial colors or sweeteners. It is vegan-friendly for vegans like me, so no issues with that or a keto diet or any of that kind of stuff. Completely compatible. Frank always likes to tout the fact that it's 15 calories per serving. And here, Robert, take a. We already hooked you up with a Phone Booth Fighting T-shirt. Take some
awesome.
Packages of Earth's Brew there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I like to heat it up and use it like a tea, but it's got a nice healing effect, relaxing to kind of wind the mind down because, Robert, after a couple hours on the mat over at your school, otherwise I sit up all night thinking about all the things I did wrong. So.
Yeah, that happens a lot. It's the downside of training at night and you get overly excited.
Yes.
And especially if I don't have a good training session.
Yeah.
I'll be up till 2 a.m.
That's right. We can't have that. So that'll help you wind down after training, or whatever it is, whatever your version of training is in this world, whether it's a hard day at work or working on the construction site like Travis, our producer. He puts in the hard hours running his blade. That's what he does. I don't know even exactly what that means, but he just talks about how he's always running the blade at work. It sounds like I did better if I don't ask a lot of questions about that. You know what I mean? I prefer to be in the dark. But I know he enjoys the Earth Brew as well. Go to earthsbrew.com, enter the promo code PhoneBooth. An exclusive offer for Phone Booth Fighting listeners, 10% off all orders at checkout by going to earthsbrew.com and entering the code Phone Booth. Thank you, Earth's Brew. This podcast also brought to you by lowtnation.com. Frank and I have been telling you for a number of weeks now about what Brandon and Jason over at lowtnation.com are doing. If you are one of the many males in the world, and certainly with no exclusion in the United States, that is affected by low testosterone, lowtnation.com has the fix for you, and they do it in a modern way involving the internet. So all you have to do is call the number that's here on the screen if you're watching our Phone Booth Fighting YouTube feed, or if you're just listening to us, I'll go ahead and give you the number. It's 866-FIX-LOW-T. Easy to remember, 866-FIX-LOW-T. What you do is give them a call. Brandon or Jason over there will grab the call. They're Phone Booth Fighting listeners too, so just tell them you're a listener to the podcast. They'll know right away to treat you right. And what they're going to do is they're going to find a lab in your area. They're based in Atlanta, but that doesn't matter because wherever you are, they're going to find a lab to hook you up with. You go in, you do a little bit of blood work. They send that to Low T Nation, and then Low T Nation takes it from there. That's the only doctor's visit involved. They see if you're compatible, if you're a candidate, and if you are, and we're already hearing that a lot of our listeners are, then what happens is they just drop ship the product to your door. So no going back and forth to the doctor. That's Frank's, he's always touting the convenience aspect. But they'll send it right to your door, but they are always there. So, if you have follow-up questions, maybe possible modifications to treatments, things like that, whatever the case, you can always pick up the phone and reach Brandon there, 866-FIX-LOW-T, and he's happy to field your calls. He tells me every week when I talk to him, man, I'm hearing from more and more Phone Booth Fighting listeners. So it's good to hear that we've got a product associated with the show that is helping a lot of our listeners. So lowtnation.com is the website for more information. Give them a call and a couple of quick, simple steps, and those guys take it from there and get you on the road to wellness. lowtnation.com. All right, let's get this show started. The great Robert Drysdale, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu superstar, is in the bunker here with me. No Frank for one more show. Frank is coming back in a couple of days. It's funny, Robert, I was texting you today, and I was texting Frank at the same time. He's over in Botswanistan or someplace wherever I forget where he was this time, but he's over there calling fights.
Yeah.
And so I was texting him and you back and forth. You ever do that thing where you got two conversations going and you text,
get them mixed up?
You get them mixed up.
I think everyone's done that.
Right. So you asked me for the reminder of what the address was over here and the gate code, and I actually sent it to Frank.
And then thanks for reminding me where I live.
That's what I said. I said, oh, sorry, that was for Robert or for you in case you've forgotten where you live by now. And he just sent me back the crying emoji because he has been on the road an awful lot. So,
I know exactly what that's like.
Yeah, because you travel a lot for seminars and stuff like that,
weekend.
right? Just get him right back, a little more into that microphone there, I think. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. You travel a ton as well, and a lot of people, don't realize. I mean, it's a cool way to make a living, getting to do what you love and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like it's easy.
It's taxing.
Yeah.
It's not fun. It's very. It's just draining in general. Like I can be uncomfortable. I know I normally travel coach, and it's not that big of a deal. I weigh 235. I'm 6'3". But now it's gotten to the point where going to the airport gives me anxiety. Like I just don't want to go. It's just not fun anymore.
Yeah.
In the sense where, for example, I'm going to go to Europe now. I'm going to be there for about 18, 19 days, and I'm going to be in 15 different countries.
Wow.
So yeah, it's not fun. Like you're at the airport twice a day. You barely sleep. Everyone's trying to rip your head off, because you're a huge target.
Yeah.
So it's as much as I love what I do.
And that's just at the airport, by the way. That's before you people ripping your head off at the airport. That's before you even get to the gym.
You get to the gym, and of course they want to they want to test you, and you eat if you can, when you can. You eat what they eat and when they eat, type thing. It's very far from a vacation. Yes, you need a vacation when you come back.
Yeah. Well, Frank is going to be back in a couple of days. So second episode of this week, he'll be on. We'll be talking about Mayweather-McGregor. Robert and I are going to talk about that as well, the results of last night's fight. But Frank and I will be talking about all that. We got a lot to catch up on. I mean, we haven't talked about that. We haven't talked about the John Jones controversy. Donald Trump keeps giving us content. So we got a lot to cover when Frank gets back. So that'll be the second episode of this week. But I've been fortunate enough to have a few people return my calls to guest host, and we had a great episode with Dan Hardy in here on the last episode, and Robert's joined us for this one. Frank and I both train over at Robert's Jiu-Jitsu Academy here in Las Vegas, and there's numerous affiliates around, things like that. We'll be talking about that in a little bit as well. Phoneboothfighting.com, the website, of course, for a couple of things. One, that is where you can get official show merchandise, like the T-shirt we hooked Robert up with. It looking very handsome. I didn't think you'd get any more handsome, and all of a sudden you put the T-shirt on, and I'm like, wow.
I couldn't think that was possible either.
What happened? Yeah. You can get your shirts. We got girl styles as well, posters, a bunch of stuff in the store at phoneboothfighting.com in the merch section. Also, the Amazon banner, which is right there on the front of phoneboothfighting.com. Why is that important? Well, if you shop on Amazon, just about everybody does. Before you do it, go to phoneboothfighting.com, click through that Amazon banner. Now, what that means is it's not going to cost you any more. It'll be just like business as usual for you and Amazon. But we get a small percentage on each one of your purchases, so they kick money back to us. And I tell you what, I just saw today that Amazon has bought Whole Foods, and starting tomorrow, they're reducing a bunch of the prices at Whole Foods. And so Amazon's getting involved in that. And if you're an Amazon Prime member, there's going to be even deeper discounts. So if you shop on Amazon and you eat clean, so you go to the Whole Foods, and you listen to this podcast, which obviously do if you're hearing my voice, marry all those things together, phoneboothfighting.com, click through the Amazon banner, and then nourish yourself from there if you're shopping Whole Foods or whatever you're buying on Amazon. It's been a while since I checked in on random wild purchases from our listeners. We'll have to do that here, Travis, next couple of episodes. Also, the podcast is available across all podcasting platforms, and all the links are right there at phoneboothfighting.com. We're talking about iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, wherever podcasts are available. And if you search us in iTunes, do us a favor, favor, look up Phone Booth Fighting, click on the 5-star rating. That helps me and Frank tremendously. And if you have a moment, write a favorable line or two as a review, and we like to read those on the air. All right, Robert, we got jiu-jitsu to talk about. Before we talk jiu-jitsu, we got to talk boxing, because quite possibly the biggest boxing event, at least in terms of dollars, in the history of Las Vegas may have just occurred last night. Conor McGregor gets TKO'd by Floyd Mayweather in the 10th round, but not before putting on a very competitive performance. And that is my first thought about all this.
It's impressive.
I went into this, Frank said no way in hell that Conor can win a fight. I didn't think he could win the fight against Floyd Mayweather either, but I did not expect that much out of him in terms of, I mean, let me put it this way. If you look at it 50 years from now, and you go, okay, who is this guy Floyd Mayweather, 50-0? When you talk about his most competitive fights, this is going to rank as one of them.
Yeah.
You know, this is going to be one of the top fights.
I think that, Conor surprised a lot of people. Not only, he pulled off the Jose Aldo fight. I didn't think he could beat Jose Aldo.
Yeah.
Yet he did it. He went up 2 weight classes to fight Nate Diaz, and he went 1-1 with Nate Diaz. That's a legit challenge right there. And then he does what he did to Sean Alvarez. And I think probably the most impressive thing. Sorry. One of the most impressive things Conor's ever done really is to pull off a fight with Mayweather. Like, think about it. He's 0-0 as a boxer.
Yeah.
Right? And he goes from being UFC champion, which of course, he's huge credit for that. But to go from that to challenging arguably the greatest boxer in history, that's a feat in itself. Just the fact that he can get in the ring with Floyd Mayweather is very impressive. I didn't think he could last, to be honest. Yeah. Any more than I expect Floyd Mayweather to last in a jiu-jitsu tournament. You're going to get killed. Yeah. And I thought, Conor just didn't. There's no way he could last. But it's very impressive. Like, when you really think about it, it's certainly, I think it threw a lot of people off. And props to him.
I thought, there's a couple of things. I thought that if you watch Floyd Mayweather over the years, he's got a blueprint. It's a dominant blueprint, but what he does is he's a natural counterpuncher.
Yeah.
He doesn't
which in this case at least worked well for Conor.
Yeah.
Because as long as Conor was patient and didn't open himself too much, Floyd is a patient fighter and he has no issues going 12 rounds.
Yeah. I mean, that's Floyd's nickname really probably should be by decision Mayweather, because he does not knock a lot of people out, and it had been a long time. Dan, when we were in here last episode, was saying that he thinks that Floyd's last real knockout was a Ricky Hatton fight, which I think has been the better part of 10 years ago now. Wow. So he definitely goes. He's got no problem going to a decision. And another thing that he does is he takes 3 rounds, 4 rounds, kind of figure his opponent out before he turns it on and outpoints him to a victory. Now, the first part of this fight looked that way. However, Conor was hitting him more than the average opponent hits Floyd Mayweather in those first 3 or 4 rounds.
Here's what I heard, though. That was part of I think Mayweather said something about that being part of his strategy, which I totally believe. He got a very experienced boxer here. He comes from a boxing tradition. His family, all boxers. They clearly, I don't think they would have if they put that strategy together, clearly it was something that it was intended. I don't think it was an accident. He was taking it, maybe not really switching gears the first few rounds. I think that really was part of his strategy to wear out Conor. And, Conor has a lot of speed and a lot of power. And I think that not only was he figuring out Conor style-wise, but he was actually trying to get some of the steam off his punches in the first few rounds, and I think he accomplished that. Yeah.
Now, one thing that I thought Conor's power might be a little more of a threat than it was, and what I'm looking at in hindsight is I'm wondering if Conor's MMA power didn't really translate to boxing, because
bigger gloves.
Bigger gloves, also not really turning over your punches the way that boxers do. I mean, there's a different. I'm not saying his punches were weak, but maybe in the end there was something lost in the translation of the disciplines.
Certainly, I could see the gloves make. Because remember, if you're going to throw, you're throwing 50, 100 punches, maybe those few ounces don't make that big of a difference. But when you're throwing thousands of punches in a fight, it's going to have a toll on you. I think that probably played some role in Conor gassing out towards the end of the fight as well. Not only is it not his sport, it's not where he comes. I mean, that's not what he's been preparing for his whole life. But I think the gloves really would make a difference there. Like everything, like just the rounds being shorter and more intense. the fact that it's a square and not an octagon. I think you get cornered a lot more. You have to moving around will be a lot more difficult. Conor has a style where he really likes to control the range. If you watch him in the UFC, that's probably his best trait, is really how well he controls the distance in and out and angles. And he does that really well. And it's not that you can't do that in the ring, but it's different. It changes things dramatically.
I thought his angles were effective in this fight, and that might have been one of the biggest revelations of this. Not only the way he was able to cut angles, but also how good his jab was. You know, a lot of it was, okay, Conor's got the one-punch knockout power, and maybe if he can land a shot and all that. Wasn't that so much as he was just able to use his range, to stay long, to use his jab. I think what ultimately caught up to him was just the gas tank, you know, and not that he wasn't in shape, but, you know, conditioning and preparation for an MMA fight which he's been doing for 30 years of his life, is different, roughly speaking, 29, I guess, is different than boxing.
Yeah.
And, you know, you just hit on it that and, you know, you're talking about 10 rounds. At this point, you've gone, you know, almost 30 minutes accumulatively in rounds, and you've also gone up and down that many times with breaks in rounds and things like that. I mean, at most, you're going to have 5 rounds in an MMA
gas tank
fight.
fail him in the Nate Diaz fight, too.
True.
You gotta keep that in mind.
Yeah. And so he just, you know, by the 5th, 6th round, he was starting to fight with his mouth open a little bit, got out of the 9th okay, although you could really see him starting to fade in that, and was TKO'd in the 10th. But listen, I mean, he absolutely looked like he belonged in there. If I just tuned into that, if I didn't know who these people were, I would have tuned into this going, well, there's a couple of seasoned professional boxers who are evenly matched. How about the fact we can say that?
Conor doesn't stop impressing people. You got to give it to the guy. Like, I'm not a big fan of his style when it comes to promoting fights. I understand why people enjoy it, but it's gone too much the pro wrestling aspect of fighting. I'm a GSP fan. I like that sort of respect, and I think that's being lost in the sport. But when it comes to him actually, you know, pulling it off, you got to give it to the guy.
Yeah, and
he's backing it up, is what I'm saying. Because like a lot of people sell, but they are unable to back it up. Like Conor has been able to back it up.
And now bring on Paulie Malignaggi, because you know, I didn't know if I would say before this fight happened whether or not I would ever think we should see Conor McGregor in a boxing ring again. Now I will say we absolutely should see that, and he's got a natural fight set up with Paulie Malignaggi, who he had the fallout with during the training camp. It won't be the money of Floyd Mayweather, but it'll be more money than the UFC makes. And the UFC now has a boxing promotion, it appears, that they want to get started, right? Perfect time. Now you've got a ready-made face of the organization, a crossover star. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and I also think this may be the perfect fix to the financial divide that was occurring between Conor and the UFC, because the UFC had a Conor problem. They've got a Conor gold mine, but they also have a Conor problem, and that problem is this guy's making so much money in boxing now. How do we keep him interested in the UFC? Well, maybe the bridge is, hey, guess what, Conor? We've kind of like the UFC created the women's division around Ronda Rousey, the first women's division. They're kind of, I guarantee they wouldn't be interested in getting into boxing if they didn't have Conor McGregor. You know, that's no coincidence. So what they can do now is they can say, hey, Conor, we've got Zuffa Boxing for you. Let's take you over there. Let's make some big money over there. Then you come back. Maybe you fight Nate Diaz again. Yeah,
the question goes, like, what do you do from here, right? Once you fight Floyd Mayweather for what, 100 million, whatever, like, you can only downgrade. You can't. I don't think it's ever going to get as big as that.
Yeah.
He's peaked.
Yeah.
Right? So from here, the question is he going to go back to the UFC and fight the Khabibs of the world, which could potentially beat him?
Could potentially beat him.
It's a super tough fight that I don't think he ever wants to take that fight.
And not nearly as much money involved.
Not even close. Or if he's going to become sort of like an Oscar De La Hoya figure where he's going to promote and just make his name is big enough that he is his own brand. He's outgrown the UFC. I can see him moving in that direction. Probably, I mean, if money really is his thing, and if he doesn't want to be fighting some of the best guys in the world, that's probably a smart thing to do.
That makes total sense to me. And where we at?
Did you see his post-fight conference? That's a quote from him on MMA Junkie, where he basically said, "I don't know what's next, but right now I consider myself a free agent. My name's on the ring. Who knows where I go from here?"
Yeah. And Dana is saying, you know, for the first time ever, Dana White, that, you know what, maybe I need to co-promote with this. Maybe if he comes back to the UFC,
taking a step back.
Yeah, if he
He's
comes back to the
definitely taking a
UFC,
step back.
I got to give him some equity.
He has to, because he realizes the Conor threat. Mm-hmm. He's gotten so big, and I don't think the UFC was always very aware of that problem. They always wanted to make sure that their brand, their name was always much bigger than the fighters.
Yeah.
Right? And in boxing, what happened was the opposite. You always had fighters who were bigger than the promotions.
Mm-hmm.
It was the fighter that drew the crowd, not so much the brand, in this case UFC. They were always aware of that problem, but the thing was, Conor did such an amazing job at selling himself that he is bigger than the UFC right now. So it's kind of like the UFC needs him more than he needs the UFC.
Well, they do, and also it's not great timing for the UFC in regards to that, because Ronda Rousey's gone. George St. Pierre's coming back. We'll see, how he looks.
But at the same time, Richard, we're watching this whole generation of MMA fighters who learn from Conor. Mm-hmm. They figured out, I think Chael Sonnen might have been the first there. Like they learned something. You know what? Unless I really push to sell fights, unless I'm not going to make big money, because when you look, Jose Aldo he was undefeated for how long? 10 years or something?
Yeah.
How much money was he making as a champion?
Not much.
Not much. He made more when he lost to Conor than he made his previous in his entire career.
Yep.
And that says something. And Jose Aldo's not great at selling fights, but you're watching, for example, Kevin Lee's coming up now, right? He's got the interim fight with
Tony Ferguson.
Exactly. Kevin changed like the last 6 months, year. He's a different guy. He's the same. He's the nicest, sweetest guy in the world. Don't get me wrong, but he understood that unless I really push to sell fights, I'm not going to get big paychecks.
The way that he and Michael Chiesa got into the dust up at the press conference.
I can see that this new breed of UFC fighters coming up, really learning from Conor and doing a better job in making UFC money, and for themselves, obviously.
Yeah, I think so too. The other thing too is, I think maybe that sometime in the future, I don't think it has to be either or in terms of. I don't think it has to be like the respectful, understated martial artist or the brash, trash-talking self-promoter. I think there could be a middle ground in there where now this would take a smart person. Okay, this would take a very articulate, very well-spoken, well-read person. But I think there could be a combination in there of somebody who could. You know what? I just attached a lot of adjectives to that. How about this one? Passive-aggressive. Yeah. See, I think there could be somebody who could come along and maybe not ever have to speak any louder than this, but at the same time rip you apart. See,
here's what I'm thinking. When I think of an ideal fighter, I really think of someone like GSPY. Mm-hmm. He was outstanding on in the ring or in the cage, but at the same time, he was so respectful. He was such a gentleman.
Yeah.
He just I think he embodied the true spirit of martial arts, and I think that to some extent has been lost. Like, I think the average fan is not interested in skills. Like, for example, if you ask them, tell me 3 things that Conor McGregor does well in the ring, they couldn't tell you. Mm-hmm. But they're interested in the pro wrestling aspect of it. And like, to me, I guess as a martial artist, I can appreciate so much more the humility and the respect for the opponent. Like Damian Maia, he gave that press conference, like, I'm not going to talk trash about my opponent. Like, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. I'm not gonna. This is who I am. And he's outstanding in the cage, right? To me, as I see it, it's almost unfortunate that people can't appreciate the skills for what they are, and they need a soap opera to really buy into the fights. So I lean towards like the other end. Although I understand why Conor does what he does, it makes perfect sense. He's making millions, but I just would much rather see GSPs, and Randy Couture was like that, always respectful, and he just never lost his.
Do you think that
respect for his opponent?
Do you think that is as simple as this? Do you think that could be cured with a fan just doing a little bit of martial arts training?
But again, it's kind of like an idealist debate too. It's a conversation between what is and what ought to be, right? It's that sort of discussion.
No, that's true. Yeah. But let me tell you, let me just like maybe from my own perspective, I like watching Damian Maia fight. Yeah. But one of the reasons that I like watching
he doesn't sell.
Well, yeah, right. But I like watching it because I've trained at least just enough to understand more of what I'm seeing than the average fan. Now, what I'm wondering is if it's an issue of maybe more people would like it if they knew more about what they were seeing.
Absolutely.
And while most people don't train jiu-jitsu, everybody's gotten in a fight with their girlfriend. You know what I mean? So it's like when they see Conor doing this, everybody can kind of relate to it
because they've all been there. Yeah,
exactly. So maybe it's
lack of education.
Maybe it's just an issue of everybody going to Robert Drysdale's academy. That might fix that.
Hey, since we're at it, 2000 South Rainbow.
One convert at a time. That's right. If you're in the Las Vegas area, you can train with Robert like Frank and I do. But if not, you can go to Robert Drysdale, BJJ.com. We have the website up there. This is Robert's Virtual Academy, and we're happy to support this here on the show. DrysdaleBJJ.com is the website. Also, if you go to phoneboothfighting.com and you click on our sponsor link, there's instructions on how you can not only get a discount on the virtual membership, but you get a free Venom gi with a year's membership. And there's a big discount on that as well if you pay a year at a time. I roll in that Venom gi. It's very, very nice. It's a lightweight gi, and because I get don't tell any of my potential rolling partners this, Robert, but confidentially, I can get a little claustrophobic in the heavy gi, so I like a little bit.
I hear. I'm the same.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually have claustrophobia, believe it or not.
Do you really?
I do. I've always.
Yeah. You know, I have not always had it, but when I very first started jiu-jitsu, I realized I would get it when I was rolling with heavy guys.
Yeah, and you can't. There's the sense of desperation. There's absolutely nothing you can do. Luckily, you can tap.
Well,
that's the good news. But like I've been underneath people and kind of panicking.
Yeah, like, and because they're big guys. But you know what? It was actually it ended up being my first real breakthrough of jiu-jitsu, because what I realized was when I first started, okay, big heavy guys are on top of me. Plus, their whole life they've been the heaviest kid on the playground, right? So they're relying on just their weight. Because in reality, I mean, they were white belts too. A lot of times they didn't really know what they were doing. They were just the heavier guy, and they're laying on top of me. So your natural inclination is to want to push something away from you. Yep. And what I realized through jiu-jitsu was, no, actually, my advantageous position is to have them in close where I can neutralize a size advantage, right? With technique. So the more that I learned technique, the more my brain retrained. So then when I had the heavy guy on top, I'm like, oh, this is where I want them, right? Yeah. For a sweep, something like that. And then it was really satisfying to see me as an average size guy be able to implement that against somebody else who didn't have any more training than I did. They just had a little more size.
I normally make the case that jiu-jitsu is harder for heavyweights.
Yeah.
Because you have to try so much harder to learn jiu-jitsu because you get away with it.
Yeah.
So you show up to the gym, let's say you're big and athletic, right? And you smash everyone. You think you're awesome. You go home thinking, I'm incredible. I beat everyone at the gym, right? In fact, you made a million mistakes, but your mistakes are invisible because no one's exposing you, right? Because you're getting away with it. Whereas when you're a lightweight, you get smashed every day, and getting smashed is a privilege. That's how you improve.
Yeah.
Losing is a privilege. That's the only way you improve is by making mistakes. I say this whenever I go to a tournament, when my students go to a tournament, and they win, you go home and you're in love with yourself. I did so great today. I got 2 gold medals or whatever, right? And there's no improvement there, right? There's no lesson learned. When you lose, like, at least speaking for myself, right? I torture myself for weeks on end, sometimes years. Like, I can't get over the fact that I lost, and that's where the improvement comes from, right? It's from the loss. So I normally say, like, a heavyweight is not exposed to those lessons as much as a lightweight is, which explains why normally the lightweight is more technical. You can see it not only in jiu-jitsu but in other combat sports as well. The lightweight is always more technical. Yeah.
You know, one final point on Conor, because we're speaking about learning from losses. This is one area that I give Conor McGregor a lot of credit on, because being at the absolute, pinnacle of stardom, I think he knows how to lose. I think he, because I remember after the Nate Diaz fight, the first one, he'd had a couple of losses before he came to the UFC, but whatever, we didn't see those. And I remember, I was at that fight, and, there was so much trash talk between him and Nate, and I thought, is this going to be Ronda Rousey, where he just kind of, vanishes into the ether or whatever. And I just remember,
a big difference between him and Ronda.
Well, no.
Ronda hated the attention. It was very obvious.
Right.
Conor loves it.
No, absolutely. But I remember that press conference because he came in and he just said, look, I got beat. I mean, he was very analytical. He sort of talked through the fight and everything. And that was the case for 24 hours. And then the 24 hours after that, he was right back to being who he was. And the thing is, bigger than ever, promoted a rematch. I
think he knows how to, exactly. He knows how to take a loss, and it's only like he downplays it too by acting that way. Right? It's smart in a lot of ways, and it's the right thing to do too. Is just kind of shake it off and get back on your feet, and so it's the right thing to do no matter how you look at it.
I think it also neutralizes that tendency of a lot of people to go, okay, well, wait, was this overhyped? Was this guy, was he really not everything he said he was? No, it's not really that. It's just that he knows how to have the night where he comes up short, address that, and then tell you, look, I'm going to be back bigger than ever. See you soon, that kind of thing, and then pay off on that.
And I think fans like that attitude too, right? Like,
I agree.
No one likes a crybaby, and
yeah,
Conor just takes his losses the way he should.
Because I'm with you. I don't need the pro wrestling aspect of it, but I think what would turn me off to Conor is if he was all that without the ability to lose,
which is very common.
It is. It is.
Like, people are not backing up. Like I said, Conor backs it up, and it's every ounce of what he says. Like the Floyd things. I consider this last fight with Floyd probably the most impressive things ever done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, that was way more impressive than winning the UFC title, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, you know what? I think that's a very fair point. And to me, what he does after these couple of high-profile losses we've seen, for me anyway, as a fan, it's kind of like reputation rehab. It's kind of like, okay, well, we're not being silly right now because you did lose and you're being realistic about that and sober about it, but it's not changing who you are. Like I said, you're going to go right back to being what we're familiar with and getting us ramped up for a fight, but you actually can. It's kind of like, I guess it's stepping outside the character a little bit and just being able to address realistically, what happened.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk some jiu-jitsu. Now, I was excited that you wanted to come in and guest host this episode because I think right now is a very interesting time in the world of competitive jiu-jitsu. And I think the internet has been an important part of that for many years now. But now that we're starting to see these grappling platforms like the networks, like obviously UFC has Fight Pass, Flow Grappling is showing a ton of jiu-jitsu. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's how you're going to be able to see Frank grapple Chael Sonnen at ADCC coming up next month. Don't quote me on that just yet, but I'm pretty sure that they are going to be the ones that'll have that stream. But what's happening now, and this is awesome in my mind, is that a lot of fans who started watching MMA are now starting to watch, just as a spectator sport, jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And so there's like, if you look at Fight Pass alone, there's Eddie Bravo Invitational. They picked up Polaris now. Polaris just had a big card weekend before last. And so there's a lot of these grappling tournaments going on, and there's also a lot of names that are starting to come to the forefront that are becoming recognizable. Now, that being said, I think especially if somebody doesn't train, they may start to see these names pop up with some regularity, but they may not know who these people are or why they have a name to begin with. What's the backstory? What should they be watching for? So I thought maybe we could start talking
two things
a little
about
bit
this,
that.
like the rise of like super fights, right? That's what I call it. Well, typically jiu-jitsu has always operated in a tournament format, right? So you win 4, 5, 6 matches, you become the champion. And that is not a model that sells really, because people need the rivalry, right? So a super fight is always going to sell better than a tournament. Now, keep in mind, a tournament is 10 times harder because you're not going to beat one expert that day. You're going to have to beat 5, 6, right? So it's far more draining, not only physically, technically. It's one thing to beat one good competitor one night. It's something completely different to win your weight class in the open, where you have to win 5 fights. That's a total of 10 fights. So that's a lot. Technically, it's a lot harder. The strange thing is, and perhaps it's a good thing for a lot of people, because it sells more, you make more money. But the tournament does not give you the same recognition. It's odd. When you think about it, because it's so much harder, right? Winning an IBJJF tournament is so much harder than winning a super fight for the reasons I just gave you. But on the other hand, you have guys getting paid more, like a tournament does not pay, because it doesn't sell, right? Even though you get this prestige there, right? You win an ADCC or an IBJJF tournament, it's far more prestigious. And I'm seeing this as a former competitor, as a coach. Like, you can't, on the prestige level, you can't compare them. One is way harder than the other. Yeah. But financially speaking, one is rewarding the athletes a lot better. So now you get guys getting paid 40, 50 grand to win a tournament or a couple super fights or whatever. And it's something that only happened in ADCC before. It only happened in ADCC, and now you're seeing more and more of that. So that's a good thing. On the other hand, I think that much of what's being pushed is not the typical jiu-jitsu format, and I think we're drifting away from what is normally has consistently been considered to be jiu-jitsu, and it's almost like we're creating a different sport. And I think there's at least on one side of it, like, people would like to create a different sport and really split the sport in jiu-jitsu in two. And I have my doubts if that's helpful. I would like to see jiu-jitsu unified and not less rule sets. I have a hard time keeping up with the rules, and I do this for a living.
Oh yeah.
There's like so many different rule sets out there. Like, I wish we were in a way more like judo, in the sense where Kodokan really centralized everything around themselves, and like, this is what judo is, and Judo, I mean, there's the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is basically an offshoot from Judo, but other than that, it hasn't really split that much. It's been remained consistently under one organization for a long time. I wonder if this split that so many people are pushing for is going to be harmful for the sport in the future. If we're really, because like now you have two different rule sets, you're going to have two different strategies.
Right.
You're going to have athletes consistently preparing more for one rule set than the other, and what's going to happen is the same thing that happened in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. You become so specific to this rule set or that rule set that they end up drifting. So the training now is completely different, right? So I have some of my students that compete for submission only, in submission only tournaments or super fights, and the way I train them is completely different than I would train them for an ADCC, for example.
Do you think that somebody? Well, okay. So first of all, let's talk about it, because we got to remember, and I say we like I am not included in this group. I, relatively speaking, am as well. I just end up watching a lot more of it. But let's talk right now to the person who's just started. Well, I watch UFC on Fight Pass. Well, wait a second. What is this CBI? Hold on. Let me click on this. Let me see what this is. What am I looking at here? Okay. They may understand that they're looking at jiu-jitsu. Nobody's going to land elbows and stuff like that. But, so rule sets, for example. Eddie Bravo Invitational is going to be submission only. Polaris, which we just saw last weekend, they have judging.
Yeah.
So when you talk about rule set and things like that, do you think if somebody is going to be a competitive, one of these names that we're going to see, let's take, for example, Gary Tonin, okay? So, one of the John Danaher leg lock guys that wins a lot of the EBI tournaments. Now, he grappled Dylan Danis in the main event at Polaris this past weekend before last. No submissions, but Gary won on points. So
Decision, yeah.
Well, yeah, but when I say
yeah,
points, that's what I meant. Decision, judges score. So let's take that as an example. Even though there are different rule sets from tournament to tournament, can somebody in your mind be successful at all of those equally, or is a modern jiu-jitsu athlete always going to gravitate more to one?
That's
set
what's
than the
happening.
other?
So you get these guys that are specializing in submission only, for example.
Yeah,
and they can't win under point system.
Yeah.
They're not going to fare well in MMA. And then you get guys who specialize in IBJJF rules. The same thing. They're not going to do well in submission only. They're not going to do well in MMA. So you're seeing the specialization. My personal approach, and I don't believe that anyone should be able to say that this is what jiu-jitsu ought to be.
Yeah.
I heard someone saying, Helio, that's not what Helio great. Helio is not in the position to say what jiu-jitsu is or isn't. No one is. Jiu-jitsu belongs to everyone. Like, whatever it means to you. That's what jiu-jitsu is. Whatever it means to you, right? So I have my own interpretation of what jiu-jitsu ought to be. And what I see is I would like to see something that works everywhere. I call it functional jiu-jitsu. That's what I teach. That's what I train. Mm-hmm. It's a jiu-jitsu that's going to work everywhere. I am very proud of the fact that what I teach is something that's going to be, for the most part, there's some marginal thing like lapel sweeps, for example, which I have to teach, but they don't translate into submission only or MMA, for example. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, what I emphasize in my classes are techniques that are going to work everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I like to think my students are prepared for a real situation, for a self-defense situation. Mm-hmm. They would be prepared for MMA. So if they actually did want to do that transition, it wouldn't be completely alien to them. Where someone who only trains submission only, sub-only tournaments, or only prepares for IBJJF tournaments, might feel a little out of water transitioning towards MMA. I like to think that the jiu-jitsu I teach is going to work for submission only. Some of our guys do really well in those tournaments, and IBJJF rules as well. So I'm somewhere in the center. That's where I'm at. Like I lost students in the past because they're so close to the margins that I can't keep them because they only want to do leg locks. That other guy only wants to do berimbolo. The other guy only cares about self-defense. So the marginal guys, I'm going to lose those, right? But I really focus in the center because that's where I believe the core of jiu-jitsu is. That's my interpretation of jiu-jitsu. I like to teach a jiu-jitsu that's going to work everywhere. And there are certain things about jiu-jitsu that are so essential that they will work everywhere, like a back take, for example. So why wouldn't I put my energy into that? Why put my energy into something that is only going to work in one arena, like a berimbolo sweep, for example, right? I'm not discarding it. I do teach it. I think it's relevant to jiu-jitsu as a whole. Anything that improves jiu-jitsu is relevant. But I am not going to put 100% of my effort into a style that is so specific. And like a lot of submission only is turned into essentially butt scooting, which is something like I just don't see it as combat. Like I've seen people make the case that it's all about the submission and that's how fighting is, and it's not. You've never been in a fight then. The position is crucial for a fight. And I think that's being lost.
I think that if you can, because the average person Now I always try to think about that because look, average masses are what's going to keep something alive, right? So what can the average person benefit from the most? Well, to me, it's learning functional self-defense. It's also being able to appreciate whatever you're seeing, and that's kind of the point of doing this segment to begin with. I'm starting to see more and more of this. Help me understand exactly what I'm seeing. I think that's beneficial because in terms of self-defense, if you even just invest a couple of years, if you even just get so far as to, you're an adult and you get a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, you're already more trained than 99% of the people walking the streets.
Yeah.
So it's not very practical unless you just cause trouble at jiu-jitsu tournaments that you're going to be getting into a lot of fights with other belted guys. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like if you can just get to that level,
you already have an advantage over 99.9% of the world population.
Right. And so then from that point, where do we go? Well, I understand if you want to specialize and you want to test yourself, be the elite of the elite. But I think there is an importance at that point of just being able to continue to learn enough to appreciate seeing whatever it is you're seeing, however you're seeing it.
So it comes down to a matter of like, what is it that is important to you? Like, so for example, a lot of people who, I completely disagree with this, but a lot of people make this case that say, oh, but submission only is more entertaining, right? It's better for the crowd. Like, I don't think it is personally, but it's my opinion. People are entitled to have theirs. I think this, and then this one again comes down to my interpretation of jiu-jitsu, but I don't believe that jiu-jitsu, its purpose is to be entertaining. It's supposed to be efficient.
Yeah, right.
I couldn't care less if it's pretty or not. If I like aesthetic, move beautifully, beautiful takedowns or what, I would just watch pro wrestling. I think it's prettier if you're going to look at it that way, right? Like spinning, flying, Shaolin monk kicks, whatever. They're beautiful. The question is it efficient for real fighting? So the reason I've always been attracted to jiu-jitsu is because it was sold in, in the early days, I was a little more fanatical about jiu-jitsu than I am these days in the sense where I don't believe that jiu-jitsu is the end-all martial art. Like a lot of jiu-jitsu people believe that. Like, oh, it's the end-all, ultimate form of self-defense. I don't believe that anymore. I think MMA is a better form of self-defense than jiu-jitsu is. But, I've always been attracted to jiu-jitsu because it's about efficiency. It works. You take someone down, they don't know how to escape them out. You get their back, you choke them, right? It's about what works. But it's not, and I think that a lot of the people who are train jiu-jitsu today, they're more concerned with the aesthetic side of it. For example, Berimbolo transition is absolutely beautiful. But is that the core of jiu-jitsu? It has its value, it has its importance. I wouldn't dismiss it, but I think we're getting a little confused here. But once again, it comes matter of interpretation. For me, efficiency ranks above everything.
And for anybody who's you hear the term Berimbolo, you don't know what that means.
It's a sophisticated, complicated, lightweight sweep.
It kind of looks for a second like somebody's breakdancing. They're doing like one of those spins on their back, right? Yeah. So just to paint, so then when you see it. But that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like just even the importance of understanding. When you hear the commentator say that, it's like we were talking earlier about. I like watching Damian Maia fight. You got to understand. It's like appreciating jazz versus the pop hit. You know what I mean?
And Damian's probably my favorite example here. Not only because he's my friend and former training partner, but I think he really embodies what I'm talking about. His jiu-jitsu, he's done well in IBJJF tournaments. He's been an ADCC champion, and he fought for the UFC title twice.
Yeah.
That's very impressive with someone that has a style that's pretty much exclusively grappling. He barely throws punches. That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of jiu-jitsu I try to teach. It's something that's going to work everywhere. So I would much rather have Damian Maias in my gym than the Gary Tonens of the world or the Joe Miaos of the world, the people that are specialized in one thing but don't fare well in other arenas.
So let's do this. So I want to throw some names at you here, and you just tell me a little bit about what you know. I got this idea actually when you and I did the commentating with Frank for the ACB Jiu-Jitsu tournament that occurred in LA, and on 2 minutes notice, I became the ring announcer.
I remember that. You did a great job, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, literally, I think we told the story on the podcast. It was literally 2 minutes. But for fans who are starting to watch this stuff and they see the names and maybe they don't know a lot about them, I'll throw some names at you and you just let me be dumb jiu-jitsu guy here for a second. You just kind of tell me a little bit about what I'm seeing. So we mentioned Gary Tonin, Eddie Cummings, Gordon Ryan. These are three names that you see. They're title holders in Eddie Bravo Invitational, and they're all trained by John Danaher. So first of all, what's the big deal about John Danaher? Who's this guy?
I frankly don't. I mean, I know who he is, but
he trained George St. Pierre. I know GSP worked with him.
You got to be careful with that. I'll say this. I think it's fair to say it's the one thing I know in life is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's about the one thing I consider myself to be, an expert at, right?
Yeah.
I can spot someone who knows jiu-jitsu from a mile away.
Yeah.
And this has to do with how they move. So if you show me an arm bar, I can tell if you memorize that move, if that's something that you truly understand. If it's part of your nervous system, that's what I'm talking about. So versus someone that just memorized it. I don't believe you can learn jiu-jitsu watching YouTube videos. I don't believe you can learn jiu-jitsu however eloquent you may be, and and every now and then you may drop a Japanese name here and there. It makes you sound smart, whatever. I don't believe you learn jiu-jitsu like that. I don't believe you can come up with great solutions for footlocks or anything for that matter by being an observer. For you to be an expert at anything, you have to have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of practice. I just don't think John Danaher has that. I really don't believe he does. I've seen the guy move. I just don't believe that. I don't know the guy. I'm not hating on him in any way, shape, or form, but there are true jiu-jitsu masters in the world. Some of them in the middle of nowhere in Brazil. They don't speak a word in English. They don't even have a Facebook, and they're true masters.
Don't have a Facebook.
They don't have we're talking about people that are in the middle of nowhere in Brazil, and they're absolutely incredible at jiu-jitsu. True masters. No one's ever heard of them.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of guy I would rather give credit to that guy who's dedicated his life to jiu-jitsu and has thousands and thousands and thousands of hours on the mats, and over a guy who's just, he's got some famous friends, but I just don't see him as an expert in jiu-jitsu. And I'm not saying this. This is as pragmatic and objective as possible. It's not a personal attack. I hope it doesn't come across that way. But when I think of jiu-jitsu masters, I can give you a list of 100 people who most people never heard of. I just don't think John Danaher belongs in that list.
Now, Gary Tonin, Eddie Cummings, Gordon Ryan, all trained with him. They're all known as leg lock guys.
I think they're already
kind of a
really good before training with him. Yeah.
Okay, you've got kind of a leg lock craze going. So of those three names, what stands out to you about any of those guys? Tonin, Cummings, Ryan?
They became exceptionally skilled at submission-only events. I think the one thing that I think that was helpful about some, this is the one positive thing about submission-only, in my view, is that it didn't so much bring back as always. I consider Dean Lister to be the greatest leg lock expert of all time because he did it. He won tournaments. I think he went to see 3 times. So to me, that is, I consider him to be the czar of footlocks. That's what people call him, and I think it's a fair nickname. But I think it was the submission-only movement kind of brought it back to light. When you think about it, it's half the body, and it's a huge blind spot for a lot of grapplers. And I think IBJJF has a big portion of the blame here. I think that it's such a fundamental, important aspect of grappling that so many of us neglected for so long. So one thing submission only did, it was very positive, was that they brought it back to life. In that sense, I think Dean Lister was really the first one. But these guys, they really pushed crucial aspects of grappling that so many people neglected, largely because of how jiu-jitsu rules were geared, right? Now, there's a safety issue, and it's a complicated debate. It's not something there are no easy solutions, whereas we should allow heel hooks for moms and dads, people who train casually, right? You blow your knee, you're out for 6 months. If we should allow them or not is an interesting debate. But I think they work. I have no shame in saying this. I'm a beginner when it comes to leg locks. It's something I'm still figuring out myself, and I spend a lot of time figuring it out. And I think the last year or so, I've put a lot of time into it and understand them a lot better than I used to. But it's something that not only I neglected, but the entire jiu-jitsu community neglected. And I think a lot of their success comes from the fact that so many grapplers were neglecting it. I'll give an example. One of our guys, Rafael Domingos, he was originally Damian Maia's student, but he's done a lot of training with me as well. So, I have a hard time calling him my student.
You share custody?
Sort of thing. Yeah, that sort of thing, right. He went against Gary. He beat Gary in IBJJF rules, and he went against Gary EBI, final of EBI. Now, Rafinha had never had his leg reaped in his entire life, right? He makes it to the final EBI, and he gets heel hooked by Gary. Once again, I hope this doesn't come across as an attack. It's not. I consider Rafinha to be a far more versed, complete grappler than Gary. But Rafinha had never been reaped before. It was the first time in his life someone went for it. We prepared for a couple weeks before, but you're not going to get, how long has someone like that has been preparing for heel hooks? 10, 15 years. No, you're not going to solve that problem in 2 weeks, right? So you had a huge disadvantage because you're competing under a rule set that is alien to you. Right, and in that regard, it was very good. It was a very good thing that the submission only movement. One very good thing that submission only movement did for jiu-jitsu.
And can we just take a second, because a lot of people may not know why leg locks are controversial to begin with. When you say rule sets are disadvantageous to them, or they've been neglected? What is the story there? Why you touched on injury, but maybe kind of expound on that for a second.
So, for
What's the
example,
controversy?
I've had this discussion with IBJJF like many times, and like they make some very valid points. Like I lean towards allowing heel hooks in IBJJF tournaments, gi and no gi, in fact. But I understand there's a very strong argument on the other side. So 90% of practitioners are on moms, dads, accountants, lawyers, everyday people, and the difference between having your elbow popped, right, and having your knee blown. Right, I've had my elbow popped. I have my elbow dislocated. Maybe a couple weeks, 3 weeks, you're back on the mats. No surgery required. Right, you blow your ACL, you might be out for 6 months longer. And you got to keep in mind too, when these rules were created, 1960s, 70s, whatever. The knee reconstruction technology was not there.
Yeah.
You were crippled for life. Right.
Yeah.
Today we can pretty much reconstruct the knee almost entirely. The technology was not there, and those rules come from that era. Right. My opinion, it's time to update things. Right. At least in the professional arena, like browns and black belts, adult division, they should allow heel hooks, my opinion. But the recovery time is much longer because it's a much shorter lever, right? The knee is not made to go sideways. It's meant to go forward and back. We're meant for walking and running. We were just talking about that earlier today.
Yeah.
We're meant for walking and running.
Yeah.
We're not meant for jiu-jitsu. Our
Yeah.
body did not
Yeah.
evolve for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So our knees do not move in that direction. So the recovery time is a lot longer, and that's why so many people are against it. Once again, I lean towards heel hooks, but I understand the argument on the other side.
All right, Dylan Dennis. Who is this guy?
I met Dylan when he would have been maybe 12, 13. I can't remember now. His parents were in Vegas, and he wanted to take a private from me. I ended up teaching a bunch of privates, became good friends with him and his family, and I really liked him. I remember his parents asked me, "Do you believe Dylan has a chance? Like, you think he can do something in jiu-jitsu?" I was like, "I think he really does. Like, you gotta, give him a chance. It's up to him. It's not up to the parents. Like, parents of the world, it's not up to you. It's up to your child. Like, if you can give them all the resources in the world, if they don't want it, it's not going to happen." So I told them to give Dylan a chance and see what he was going to do with it. And it's like, "Oh, where should we take him to train?" It was like, "Oh, take him to Marcelo's in Manhattan, right?"
Marcelo Garcia.
Yes. Take him to Garcia's gym in Manhattan and see what happens. And so I was able to see his progression. I met him as a blue belt, so he wouldn't have been 13. He would have been closer to 16, I think. And I've been able to see he won tournaments on all belt levels, and he really pulled it off. And he's easily one of the best in the world in his weight class.
Now he helps coach Conor McGregor. I think he works on his jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And we just recently saw him grapple Gary Tonin at this Polaris a couple of weeks ago. Now he is taking a page from Conor McGregor in the promotion department. He's trying his hand at that. What do you think?
I mean, I've had this discussion with Dylan before. Like, I understand why this generation does what it does. I think it's you make more money that way, basically. Like doing what, for example, I'll mention a couple names of jiu-jitsu guys that I really like that most people never heard of, yet they're far more accomplished than all the names that we mentioned today. Like people like Lucas Lepre, or what's his Augusto Mendes Tanquinho. He fights in the UFC as well. These guys are far more accomplished, have won far more significant tournaments. In my opinion, are far better, but they're quiet. They don't, so they're not going to get paid all. I think Dylan signed a Bellator contract without ever fighting. I mean, it's very impressive in a way, but when you think about it, it's not my particular strategy. But I don't stop people from doing what they do. If some of my students have that sort of mindset and they want to do that, right? They believe that is the route for for them to achieve success. I don't stop them. They know how I feel about it. I don't have self-marketing skills. I have zero. And if I did have them, I still wouldn't use them. It's not something I believe that if you want to accomplish something, you do it through merits and hard work. You put your head down, you win the biggest tournaments. You want to be the king of jiu-jitsu, you beat the best guys in jiu-jitsu. That's what you do. You go to the biggest tournaments and you beat the best guys in the jiu-jitsu. You can't go to the dollar store, buy a plastic crown, put it on your head, and call yourself the king of jiu-jitsu. It doesn't work that way. Now, some people will like it. Some people dig into that sort of, it's not me. But I think the average fan maybe likes. I don't. I think that if you want to be the king of jiu-jitsu, you have to beat Buchecha, you have to beat Roger, you have to beat Rafael Mendes, you're going to have to beat, those are the guys you're going to have to beat if you want to be the king of jiu-jitsu.
It's, this may seem to be a surprising analogy when I first say it, but if you're talking about self-promotion, coming from the world of stand-up comedy, what I can tell you is that here's the big risk of stand-up comedy. When it works, it's awesome, people are laughing, feels great. When it's not working, when you are not funny, you are so not funny. Like, if I say to you, hey, you know what? I think I can do 50 push-ups. And you go, I'll bet you can't. And let's say I knock out 37 and then I kind of crap out. Okay, maybe you give me a little bit of a hard time. But it's not painful. It's not like, oh, God, could you believe that? If you watch somebody on stage trying to use their wit and fail at it, it's like
it's all or nothing. It's an all or nothing game. You're either great or you suck.
Yeah, and so I think that is the real peril that a lot of these guys risk is, awesome if you can have the mouth of Conor McGregor or Chael Sonnen, but let's say you try and you don't. Ouch. You know what I mean?
I could see myself being that. 'Cause I could never do it. I would be so bad at it. Like, I would never even try. No, once again, like, I understand why people like Connor, Dylan, whoever, like, why they do what they do. It makes them more money. It makes sense. I'm less understanding of why people applaud it. That to me makes less sense. But if it works for you and makes you happy, that's what you got to do. I mean, it's just a matter of like where your values are and how you perceive yourself in the future and what you want for yourself. And that's at the end of the day, it's jiu-jitsu is not about, to me, it's far less about self-defense and fighting or career. It's like, I love it, right? It's, to me, it's fun. If you're happy doing what you're doing, then that's what you got to do. And everyone's different, so I don't think that everyone should think like me. It's just it's just giving you my personal opinions.
AJ Agazarm. What do you know about this?
I like AJ. I met him. He was a
Florida guy.
He was just making his transition from wrestling to jiu-jitsu when I met him, and he's just a very skilled, very talented kid. And same thing, he's just, and I like AJ. I can name 100 people more accomplished than him. But he's managed to do so much more for himself because he's good at marketing himself. He'll talk smack about people, and it's a different approach. It's not something, I don't know if it's a generational thing. Maybe I'm getting old, but I remember like back in the day in Brazil, like
back in my day.
That's exactly what I sound like. I know I'm like a dinosaur, I'm practically extinct. But there was this respect we have for, like, you would never talk about like that to an opponent ever. You would never throw a water bottle at someone. You would never. There's this term in Brazil called marqueteiro, which is an expert at marketing. In Brazil, it's an insult. If you want to insult someone, you call them marqueteiro. It means you're not really that good. You're just good at promoting yourself. So it's an insult. So it's a very different cultural approach, right? Whereas here, if you say you're really good at marketing, it's a compliment. So it's a completely different. And I guess that's more the Brazilian in me.
You know what's funny about that, Robert? I don't know if that's generational. I think it might be philosophical because I'll tell you the inverse of that. So the guy that owns the brothels that I work for, he's 70. Okay, so we're way apart the other way by several generations. He says on his, and he's a fantastic self-promoter, the best I've ever seen. And he says that on his tombstone, he wants it written, world's greatest salesman. Now, he thinks that would be a tremendous accomplishment. If somebody called me the world's greatest salesman, I would be horrified. That sounds awful to me. Do you know what I'm saying?
I'll take it as an insult.
Because I take it the way you just use that Portuguese term.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's this is what I believe in. If something is good, like the wheel never had to be marketed. Like something as great as the internet never had to be marketed. Yeah. If you're truly good at something, marketing becomes necessary. Because what is marketing when you think about it? What is PR? All these, latching on these loopholes in human psychology, trying to convince people they really need to buy something they don't need. That's what marketing is. Think about it. Like it's something about it's pushing something that's really not there, but will make it look like it is. It's like putting a beautiful label. Like, for example, corporations, they'll hire people and you have to use this font, this color, this size to catch people's attentions, right? I think there's a term for it called, I think it's called attention engineers. That's what they call it these days. They use them for social media and marketing. Like
that happens in politics. They actually will pick color schemes. You're trying to get somebody to vote for you to govern, and there's consultants who are going, this color scheme will work better than another.
And they have and there are books on this, there are studies on this. What they're trying to find is how can we better trick the human mind? How can we convince people that this product, even though it might be garbage, is actually something incredible, right? Yeah. So when I think of something, it's like if my jiu-jitsu is truly good, right? I shouldn't have to market it at all because it will sell itself. Yeah. That's how, and if it's not selling itself, it's because it's not good enough. It's just a matter of the approach of human nature. Like, well, what do you see? How do you perceive humans? You believe humans are just like easily gullible, and or if they're actually, we're capable of critical thinking. Personally, I like to believe the second. And to me, it's a matter of, I'm just not willing to market something that's I can't sell a product that I don't believe I truly have. So if I can't sell a product, what I see it is, if your tournaments and your accomplishments should speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And that goes for everything.
I've always felt that way. Like, for example, the podcast or sponsors that we get involved in the show, things like that. If it's something that I can get behind and I can believe in, then I can probably, I guess I can do an effective job of selling it, but I don't feel like I'm selling something because it's something I believe in. But I couldn't generically do that. I couldn't just, well, if you're good at this, then how about this product I've got? Well, I don't even know what that is. I don't have no relation to
So
that.
I have I don't think I understand the importance of marketing. People need to see your product, and that's how you're gonna make money. And that's at the end of the day, you got to pay the bills. But the way I see it is, if it's not selling itself, it's because it's not good enough.
Yeah.
So back to the drawing board. What can I do to improve on myself?
Yeah.
Right. So for example, if I suppose I'm a writer, right, and no one's paying attention to my writing, you have two different routes. You can actually improve on your writing, or you can go and market it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather do the first. Like I want to be the guy. What can I do to improve on myself so it is good enough so it sells itself, versus like I really need to play into human loopholes in our psychology to sell a product.
For me, it's the difference between are we talking about something that's really good and really valuable and just not a lot of people know about it, or are we talking about something that needs some artificial dressing up? The former
label.
I can do much better with than the latter, because then if it's the former, then I'm just turning you on to something that is cool that I found that you don't know about yet, but you're going to dig after I turn you. See what I'm saying? As opposed to I got to figure out how to lure this person into wasting some time with this thing, right?
It's once again, Richard, it's my personal approach. I think like you, but I understand why people disagree. Like there is, maybe if there's no marketing behind. For example, the Gracie family did an incredible job in marketing jiu-jitsu. To the point where a lot of what they sold was just simply not true. Some of the sales pitch were just simply incorrect. But
can you give me an example of that? Like, what do you mean?
Oh my God, we're going to get in for we're going to be here for a while.
Well, just maybe a quick overview, because you're going to say that and people are going to go,
I'll give an example. I'll give you off the top of my head.
For
example, Helio Gracie was a frail individual. He, he was very sick and everything. He might have been, everyone gets sick, but he's quoted in the Brazilian press as a rowing and swimming champion prior to training jiu-jitsu. So he's very athletic. It's interesting that I was watching this Helio Gracie documentary. It's on YouTube. I think it's a biography channel documentary. And they're talking about how frail he was, right? So they show a picture with him with his shirt off. And they go to the length of distorting the image to make him look skinny. You can pause it. You can see it's very, very clear. They did a poor job of distorting the image. If you're watching that documentary, it's on YouTube, you can pause it. You can see they went to the lengths of actually distorting Helio Gracie's image to make him look skinny. So maybe it sells better that way.
So it's kind of like maybe taking something that's rooted in reality. For example, it is a fact that he was more of an average sized guy. He wasn't a giant or anything like that, right?
For the Brazilian average, I would say he's above average athletic.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like you don't look at him like a lab specimen.
No, he's not like a
right. But then you go, that may be the reality. But then what you do is you add a little spin, a little shine on it by going, and he was, frail, as opposed to, he was maybe more of an average sized guy, but he was athletic or something like that. Is that what you mean? Because it doesn't.
One example is you can't sell a product to the American public and think this guy was an outstanding athlete, and that because people are going to go, okay, so that's why you can do it. It's a much better sales pitch if you go, he was frail, and he was still incredible. So look that's how incredible this art is, right? It's based off of a lie. But at the same time, I understand where it comes from. So, I could see it made jiu-jitsu the sport, and that's why I'm here. So I have, maybe thanks to that lie, I'm here right now. It is in any case a lie. So it's just sometimes maybe marketing can play a positive role.
And in fairness too, I don't know, but I'm just going to throw this out as devil's advocate. I know that a lot of times too, something that can happen is those tall tales can be built not always from the primary storyteller. So it's like as you go and as your legend goes, people are going to layer this stuff on it. Now maybe you're not working real hard to dispel it. If somebody goes, if I know that I, in reality, accomplished A, and so I hear the story from somebody else, and they go, yeah, you did A, B, and C. Maybe I didn't invent the B and C part, but maybe at the same time, I'm not going to go, oh, hold on, let me sit you down for a second and tell you about B and C being a little exaggerated. I don't know. I'm just saying.
It's just a matter of it's one of those things. Does the end justify the means? That's a great question, right? Like when it comes to these things, that's what it comes down to. And can you achieve something good doing through deceit? Can a lie achieve something good? I think in some cases, maybe yes. It's hard to say.
Speaking of Gracies, you mentioned Roger Gracie and Buchecha. Now, let's explain those. I mean, for somebody who's just learning about jiu-jitsu, we just saw these two guys 3-4 weeks ago. Gracie submitted Buchecha.
Fighting for the crown.
Yeah. You hear the names. What's behind them? Who are these guys?
So, a little background. Roger is the son of Mauricio Gomes and Hayla Gracie.
Does he like Roger and not Hodger?
I think Hodger is the
okay. I was going to say I've spent all this time abandoning the hard R. And
I don't know. I don't know.
I got to go back the other way.
I have no idea.
All right.
You got to give it to Roger. He's a very quiet. He's the kind of guy that I look up to. He's extremely accomplished. I think it's hard to put a crown on anyone really and say this is the greatest of all time. Like, I don't like to do that, but if you really press me and you ask me who was the greatest of all time, I would say Roger Gracie.
And what is his? How does he factor into the family tree? Do you know?
He is the daughter of Hayla. Hayla is Carlos Gracie Sr.'s daughter.
Okay.
So Carlos Gracie, arguably the patriarch of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is his grandfather.
Because there was Ilio and there was Carlos.
Oh, there's a lot more than that.
No, but I mean, as far as like the two faces you see in the academies,
this
right?
goes into back to our jiu-jitsu research.
Right.
There's George Gracie was probably, he's on par with Carlos and Helio in my opinion when it comes to his importance in jiu-jitsu. But he got downplayed by his own brothers because he didn't like his brothers. Yeah. But he was by far the most experienced and, in my view, the best fighter in the family of that generation, but no one's ever heard of him.
Wow.
Yeah, so the history of jiu-jitsu is very, very
incomplete. But those are the, just for the, the casual, those are the two faces.
Correct.
You see Carlos and Ilio when I trained at Charles Gracie Jiu-Jitsu up in Reno where I started. Those are the two, the pictures on the wall. Okay, so we got those guys. So he comes from the Carlos
Gracie lineage.
Okay, great. So that's Hodger. And so you were saying, so kind of because now, I mean, what got him to this point?
Okay, so Roger went on to win 3 absolute world titles, and he lost 5 finals. He lost a final to Pejipano, he lost 2 finals to Jacare, and he lost 2 finals to Xande Ribeiro.
Absolute meaning it could be any weight of opponent.
Open weight class, right? Yeah. So that's the most significant title in gi jiu-jitsu. Yeah. He made it to the final 8 years in a row. He won 3, he lost 5 finals. Now, to me, the fact that he made it to the final 8 years in a row is in itself an accomplishment, right? It's incredible who does that, right? Buchecha just outdid him last year, right? So Buchecha has 4 absolute titles. So a lot of people are saying, well, Buchecha outdid Roger. He's clearly taken Roger's crown as the greatest gi grappler of all time. And Buchecha, we have a similar background. His coach is my partner, Rodrigo Cavaca. That's the guy who brought him up from white to black belt. And, we have a lot of friends in common. And there's a part of me that really thought that Buchecha was going to win because Roger came out of retirement. He was a good 15, 20 pounds lighter than Buchecha, I believe. Don't quote me on the weight. I could be wrong. And 10 years, he hasn't competed in almost 10 years. He just came back and it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I was in a way, and maybe this is like the petty, side of me is, I was kind of almost relieved, because what Roger did to Buchecha was pretty much what we did to everyone from my generation. He just made everyone look stupid. I couldn't score a point on the guy. Yeah, I was in my very, very best shape, and everything was on point. In practice, people can score a point on me. It would go months without anyone scoring a point on me in practice. Yeah. And I'm going with some of the best grapplers in the world, and Roger, I couldn't score a point on Roger. He was that dominant. And he comes out of retirement, and he does basically the same thing to Buchecha. And it was kind of, a lot of people saw that match as a confrontation between old school and new school, right? And I always hated that discussion because it's really idiotic. There's no such thing as old and new. There's only what works and what doesn't, right? If something is new and it works, it's good jiu-jitsu. And if it's something that old and works, which is a lot, it's just good jiu-jitsu too. That's how I like to look at things. But a lot of people saw it as I think a lot of people, the old school, what it's called old school, and haha, I told you guys, right? And a lot of the new school guys would feel like they lost, and we really shouldn't look at it that way. But it was, in any case, an incredible display of someone coming out of retirement, almost 10 years without competing, given a weight advantage to Buchecha, and still absolutely dominating. I couldn't believe it, to be honest. And
Buchecha, so that's a name that everybody hears. What's a little overview on him? And you kind of touched on it for a second.
Well, he's from São Vicente, which is just outside Santos in the state of São Paulo, Brazil. Like I said, we have a lot of friends in common. His team, Checkmat, is where used to be Braza, and they left, and he became part of Checkmat. But we have a lot of friends in common, so I was kind of rooting for him, to be honest. And I actually thought he was going to win. But but Buchecha, what he has done in the last few 5-6 years in jiu-jitsu competition, since he's got his black belt, is incredible. It's he won 4 world titles in the open weight class. That's he holds the record. Roger had 3, right? No one else. I think Xande and Jacare had 2 each. But yeah, so like, a lot of people considered Boucher should be the king of jiu-jitsu until that match came about.
And
just one more thing, it's very when I say king of jiu-jitsu, it's incredibly arbitrary.
Yeah,
because it's so unfair on the lightweights.
Yeah,
you get guys like Bruno Malfacini and Rafael Mendes and Augusto Mendes and Lucas, like all these incredible grapplers they're never going to hold that crown, so to speak, because they're light and they're not going to win the open division.
Yeah.
So it's very unfair on them. But people like those labels. I use them too. Maybe I shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. And then and we know that Frank has this super fight coming up with Chael Sonnen at ADCC. But for those who don't know what ADCC is about in Abu Dhabi, what's kind of the story there?
It goes Abu Dhabi Combat Club, right? That's what ADCC stands for. Sheikh Tahnoun, he fell in love with jiu-jitsu. He was studying in California. He was people didn't know he was a sheikh, right? So he had his friend, like a family friend, and they moved to California with him. He's supposed to go to school.
Was it like coming to America?
It's very similar. It was
Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall. Don't bring up the fact that I'm a sheik.
It wasn't
until James Earl Jones showed up and blew the gag.
I wonder if it was inspired by that movie, because it's exactly what happened. He basically was going to the academy as like a regular guy, and I was told this. Don't quote me on this, but a lot of his friend, who used to work for the family, a lot of people at the gym believe that his friend was the actual rich guy, and he was just like the guy that was under
That's
him.
Totally coming to America.
Yeah.
That's what Arsenio Hall told everybody to pick up girls when they worked at McDowell's together.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And he's obviously one of the wealthiest men in the world.
Yeah.
He fell in love with jiu-jitsu, so when he went back, he decided to organize this tournament. He called it ADCC World Championship, and it was the only jiu-jitsu tournament that was, at that time, it paid more than the UFC. In fact, I remember the open weight class. Don't quote me on how much it was, but it was way more than people like Chuck Liddell were getting paid in the UFC.
Yeah,
and it was just it was clearly coming out of his pocket. Never made any money from it, but it was like, to him, like, I was throwing $500,000 at a tournament. That's you got $1 billion popping out of your soil every morning. What's $500,000, right? So he just really loved jiu-jitsu, and he started this tournament, and it went from there. It became the most prestigious grappling event in the world.
Yeah, very cool. So we'll that'll be coming up next month, and again, Frank and Chael. This has been a fun one to make, because we've had Chael on to talk about it, and it's kind of fun to hear the two guys, because it's like you said, on the one hand, Chael's great at trash talking, but on the other hand, he'll poke some fun at himself too. So
yeah,
it's been
I met him once. He was a really nice guy when I met him, and I think that a lot of times these fighters, in order to sell, like we discussed earlier, make money, they're really not themselves so much. They just know how to play a character really well, and they may have come across as an asshole, and they're actually just really nice guys. Yeah.
Well, no, he's super smart, and we've done some live shows. A live show so far with him. We're going to do more of these, but he's a great conversationalist, and there's a lot behind that. It's kind of what we were talking about a second ago. With you're going to get exposed pretty quick if you don't have intellect behind your brashness. But he's actually
I've heard that he's a smart guy.
He actually gave, I thought, the most amusing answer to a question that I ever heard asked in a press conference. After it was in promotion for the second Anderson Silva fight. So of course he lost both of those, but as fans will recall in the first one, he was hanging with Anderson in that first fight for 4 rounds in a way that most people couldn't hang with Anderson back then. Yeah. And then he got submitted. Well, he was asked in the press conference leading up to the second fight, how is this one going to be any different? If you're not going to finish Silva, you're going to have to be good for all 5 rounds, not 4 or 5, etc. Yeah. And he goes, well, now, in fairness, I misunderstood the rules. He said, I thought tapping ended the round. So I thought I had 4 rounds banked and I would win. And it was
a great answer. It's such a great answer. You give me a million years to think about an answer like that, and I couldn't pull it off.
It was funny. It was funny too, because then there's the translation, because they got to wait to explain it to Anderson Silva.
And there's like a lot of people out there. They're like, is he for real? Like, they can't tell if he's joking or not.
Yeah. That was very amusing. Robert, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but speaking of cheapening jiu-jitsu, Frank and I have a new thing that we're doing during live shows. We call this combat jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Okay. Or rather, I'm sorry, combat, name that tune. Okay. Because I'm very good at name that tune. So, like, if you just play like a random classic rock song, I usually name it within the first few seconds. So what we're doing during live shows is we clear the stage and the DJ plays a classic rock songs. I don't know what they're going to be ahead of time. I have to name the tune before Frank can submit me. And and listen, not to disparage your training of Frank, but so far I'm undefeated. Now
That's impressive.
Well, I
I'd be
don't,
horrible at that game.
Yeah, I think it's maybe just my nerddom being able to name a song in 1 second, because sometimes that's about all I got. We do follow Eddie Bravo overtime rules where the positions get progressively harder, so it gets a little. The last time we did it, I mean, the last one was scary because he started by having my back.
Yeah.
And as I have said on the show before, I did successfully name the tune, but the room was starting to get dark. You know what I mean? I had no time.
Second.
Yeah. So
and wait a second, any tune? Like what's?
Yeah. So here's what we did. Now, the first time we did anything from the Springsteen catalog, which is since 1972. I mean, the guy's got a ton of records. So it was impressive. But I do realize that now we're going to need to step this up. Like, I'm basically going to tell you can play any classic rock song.
Okay, so it has to be. I was just going to ask you that. It's got to be in the category, obviously. So classic rock is the category.
Yeah. Oh, Travis just quit the show. What an unceremonious exit
one has
Travis
been harmed,
just
do not
made.
worry.
Yeah. No, everything's fine. He just okay. Yeah. So what I will do is, and not that it matters, but I mean, I can make a feeble attempt at a defense. So if I can just happen to get an arm in if I can answer the phone real quick, maybe I can buy an extra second or so. But yeah. So that's kind of the idea. So we are going to need to make it progressively a little more challenging. Of course, the real payoff's going to be the first time I go out. Committed to my craft.
But you got how many times you beat Frank at that game?
Well, we did. I don't know. We probably did it. We did it 3-4 times. Probably we had 3 or 4 examples.
So when you
of
get put to sleep, you'd be 4-1.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a bad record.
Yeah, and then I'll have to, like Conor McGregor, I'll have to show everybody I know how to lose. I know how to come back strong later. But
who thought of that? Was that you or Frank?
Okay, I'll tell you how it came up. Frank and we did a radio show together. And we did MMA Junkie Radio. And we're sitting there with our headphones on during the break, and the producer is playing random classic rock songs, and I'm showing off by naming them. So I'm just like, it wasn't even on the air. I was like, all right, play it, a couple of seconds. Okay, that's Dust in the Wind by Kansas or whatever. And so it was actually that producer, because Frank was on the air with us, and he was sitting there. He goes, I wonder if Frank could submit you faster than you could name a song. I was like, let's try it.
Let's try it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's fun. All right. So speaking of fun, if you are in the Las Vegas area, you can do what Frank and I do and train with Robert Drysdale at his flagship academy here on Rainbow in Las Vegas. You not only let old guys like me show up, Robert, and also train world-class athletes like Frank. You got kids classes, too.
Yeah.
And I know Travis had a question about that because Travis has procreated, and he had a question. He's got a daughter who just turned 3, and he wants to know how long it is before you can, when's the minimum age? When can the kids get involved?
Yeah, so basically right now 4 and up, right? That way the child can be in the class, right? When we have like 3-4 instructors on the mats, but like when they're that age, they require a lot of attention. Yeah, I am planning on starting a program for 2 and 3-year-olds with the parents on the mats as well, so that way the parent can help out the child, and they'll be, they're on the mats with the kid. Otherwise, it's you basically need an instructor per child, and it becomes very difficult.
Yeah, I used to, when the school in Reno where I started, the kids class would be directly, it was a small room, so we're all on the same mat, and the kids would be training their class would wrap up just as we were starting, and it was intense. Like, not having any kids, I would just look at it going, good Lord, how are you, it was like herding cats.
It is like herding cats. Like we very proud of the fact we have a minimum of 2 instructors on the mats. There are days we have 2, normally have 3 or 4. Yeah. Right. And we'll have 30 kids on the mats plus. So And it's complicated. It's complicated. Most programs will have like one instructor only, and I've done it before, but in hindsight, I don't remember how I did it.
Yeah.
Like, it was just madness. And I've seen programs that are just hectic.
Yeah.
We're very proud of the fact that we were able to keep good order in class, and our kids program does really well. We've won like pretty much every local tournament the last 10 years straight. And, discipline is something we really would push hard on. And it's a great foundation for children. I truly believe so. Because like, what it does is not so much, we're not trying to create super athletes. One thing I really push my instructors to teach is you're really just trying to get people to fall in love with the gym.
Yeah.
Because if they fall in love with working out, they fall in love with training, they will be training forever. It's going to be a habit versus a chore. Like, I hate running sprints. Yeah. As soon as I stop fighting, like, I'm never going to run a sprint again in my life because I hate it, right? But I still train every day because I absolutely love it. The gym is probably my favorite place in the world. And that's really one thing I try to teach that, and I hope my instructors learn that from me, and they push it on their students, because we want the child to fall in love with training. If we can do that, then we have a better chance of creating a UFC champion that way than we do with making a 6-year-old run sprints, which some parents make their kids do, which is crazy.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think from my perspective, like, I think if there is something that makes you, it's like why people maybe drink coffee in the morning. It just kind of wakes them up. You know, you get in that, and I'm saying that's the best thing for you, but if you do it, a lot of times it's just, I'm just drinking something that's strong in the morning and I feel better, during the day because of it. If you can get into that habit with training, because I feel that, like, if I haven't been training, I just feel kind of like I feel it. Like I kind of, and I don't know how much of it is physical, but also how much of it is psychological as well, where I'm like, I feel so much more productive if I feel like I've trained. Even if it hasn't been the greatest day of training, it feels psychologically productive. Yeah. And of course, it is practically productive as well. So there's your answer, Travis. He's starting the good news is he's about to start the program that Olivia can train in. The bad news is you got to go with her. That's the thing.
Keep
you got to get on the mat. Yeah. Well, so you got one signing up. Are you down for this, Travis?
Yeah. We need to get her into something, and I know she'll enjoy it. She's pretty wild, and she's pretty advanced for 3 years old. You'll see.
It's a way of getting you on the mats too, Travis.
Yeah, I'm down.
You're gonna have to start training too, because you're gonna have to understand the moves, right?
I'm down. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure we can get Cobalt or old Milwaukee to make a gi or something like that. One of the power tool companies for you.
Caterpillar is
Caterpillar. There you go. Yeah. The Caterpillar gi. Yeah. Okay. So that's that. And then of course we said DrysdaleBJJ.com for the online virtual stuff. But there's also affiliates as well, right? Like depending on where people live, there are affiliate academies that
all over the world.
They can go to all over the world. So if it's got the Drysdale name on it,
well, our world brand is Zenith BJJ.
Yeah.
I changed it for my own name.
Yeah. That's right. The Zenith
is the umbrella name.
Okay. All right. Yeah. If you see the Zenith patch. Hey, by the way, speaking of the Zenith patch, why do some of the guys have the Rolling Stones tongue logo? Is that anything affiliated with you? They just went out and got it.
No,
somewhere.
Yeah, they're just probably fans. No.
Okay, because it may just be a coincidence that I've seen that on a number of people who also have the Zenith patch. I didn't know if there was some tie-in.
No, there's no connection.
They've probably started some
interesting
secret...
you say that, but it's... Yeah. And it's the secret society I'm unaware of.
They probably started a secret society and didn't invite me in. I'm going to have to get to the bottom of that. That's right. Yeah. The real people pulling the strings. All right. Well, Robert, this has been awesome, man. I hope you had a good time.
My pleasure, man.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
It's always great to have you along. And you're I was telling Dan Hardy on our last episode. I don't know if you know. Speaking of lineage, like the Gracie lineage we were talking about, the friendship lineage here, the way this works is Dan and I had been friends for a long time, and he was always telling me that I would be great friends with Frank Mir if I ever hung out with him. And so now we credit Dan with kind of being the inspiration for getting the podcast together and all that. But Frank always told me I would really get along with you. He was he's like, man, if you ever sit down and talk to Robert, and he's so right about this. I always enjoy.
Likewise.
Frank paired us up on a blind date. We took a long car trip together.
To ACB.
That's right. To EBI. That's what we did.
Oh, the EBI. That's right. Yes, that's right. That's right.
And we drove to L.A. and back, and it felt like it took about 20 minutes because we just talked the whole way.
Yeah.
And I knew he was right about that. So anyway. I appreciate him for that. Okay, so for Robert Drysdale and the on assignment Frank Mir, he will be back on our next episode. And for Travis, doing a great job as producing as always. Remember, check out phoneboothfighting.com. Click on those 5 stars in iTunes. Give us that top rating. We really appreciate it. Check out the phoneboothfighting.com merchandise store. And remember to click through the Amazon banner if you're shopping on Amazon. For all the fellas here, I'm Richard Hunter, and we will see you next time right back here on Phone Booth Fighting.